Hello and welcome to Digital Transformation for Humans with your host, Amy. In this podcast, we delve into how technology intersects with leadership, innovation, and most importantly, the human spirit. Each episode features visionary leaders who understand that at the heart of success is the human touch, nurturing a winning mindset, fostering emotional intelligence, and building resilient teams. Today, we'll talk about resistance as a resource in digital change management. And David Galea from Malta is our fantastic guest today. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Amy.
Let's start the conversation and transform not just our technologies, but our ways of thinking and leading. And if you are interested in connecting or collaborating, find more information in the description. And don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes. So, David, let's talk about you. It's so great to see you here today. Let's dive a little bit deeper into your experience, your profile. I know that you are an author of a best selling book and you have such a long list of achievements. So please tell a few words about yourself and share with our listeners and those who are watching us today what you have been to through your life.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. I have been in digital transformation, I would say, for the past 20 years. Now I'm disclosing my age, but it's quite a long, long experience for me. And I think I have been lucky to have dealt with people coming from all walks of life, ranging from prime ministers going down to the relatively unskilled. And this has given me different perspectives of how to deal not just with change, but also with life. Because sometimes you get the best advice, not just for change process, but also for your own sake, from the people from whom you least expect it. And this philosophy has been my mantra for the past years. Don't exclude anyone in any change process that you are carrying out, because you might learn very interesting things from people who are driving, who are doing day-to-day work on the ground. I've worked in transformation in Middle East. I was a subject matter expert with governments there, providing them best practice advice on digital enablement. I've worked also with blue chip companies in the UK as well, setting up digital transformation programs, program management offices, rolling out specific implementation programs, including 4G in the UK as well. But I've also worked with solo entrepreneurs who have a visionary idea, a technology visionary idea, and they want to make it happen. So I help them also to commercialize this idea with the user in mind, which is the organization that wants to digitalize its operations from that perspective. As I said, I've worked with people, and this is what really interests me. Although I am in the technology sector, people is my topmost priority. So I always take an active interest in people whenever I am involved in change management, in digital transformation projects. And what I found most of the cases is that what you get to know does not come out from the meetings and the formal structures that you set up, but in most cases, you get to know things from the grapevine or from the informal structures. In fact, I can recount many times where I was involved in projects where we had numerous meetings, formal meetings, but then I sit down with people within their own office, and after some time they come to talk to me. They tell me, listen, but that's not the way it's done. It's done in a different way. It is done in this way, in this way, in this way. Or there's this pain point or that pain point. And I find these conversations very useful, these informal conversations, because you really get a lot of insight, which does not emerge from the formal discussions. So I do like to apply a very hands-on approach. I don't like uh, not even open door policies. I like those doors to be broken down, go down to the shop floor, and actually look at people and basically share the pain with them. In fact, in my book, Digital Made Simple, it's divided into three components. It describes a simple way of carrying out a digital transformation. And it adopts a humanistic approach because it takes three stages. You've got the first stage is mindfulness. It's about being mindful about your own organization, and that includes taking on multiple perspectives from different people, but not just people, but and taking also multiple snapshots at different points of time, because organizations are continuously changing. They are a living organization, living organism. The second stage is developing a digital strategy, but being prepared to change it. So, although you need to have a roadmap, you need to have the right readiness to and the right structures to change as change happens around you, and change happens all the time. And the third phase is what I call balanced leadership, which is the pure humanistic approach to implementing digital transformation. Most consultants will tell you need to have technology, process, and people. Fine, but that's not enough. You need to have not the best people, best process, and the best technology, but the right people, the right processes, and the right people that are in balance and work in harmony together. It's no use having a football team having the greatest footballers and there's no teamwork. The real value lies in the teamwork. And the same goes for any digital transformation process. It's not about having the best resources, it's about having the right resources and having effective coordination between them to make it successful.
That's a brilliant insight because so often exactly that part is the part which is leading to the failed projects, and unfortunately still such a huge part of those digital transformation projects are failing, but most often exactly as you mentioned, not because of the technology but because of the human factor, and collaboration, communication are laying in the core of those success factors which are making or breaking that transformation. And resistance is, of course, big. Nobody likes to be in the zone which is laying outside of their comfort. Nobody wants to be outside of their comfort zone, and when it happens, it takes a lot to align and move forward. So, how can leaders effectively identify and understand the sources of that resistance within their organizations during digital transformation projects?
Most of the resistance comes, I would say, there are many reasons for resistance, but I would say that most of it comes from communication, lack of communication. And for me, communication is more about listening than about saying. So, what I find, and I really do find it a big problem when I get into digital transformation programs, sometimes leaders tell me, okay, but let's keep it a bit hush for now. Let's not come up with grand plans until we have a proper roadmap and we can communicate it. But that is a big mistake. You need to involve people right from the start, because what will make it successful is commitment. Commitment from people who are committed to your own vision and committed to lead and execute. Unless they are committed, you will always have resistance. I always distinguish between motivation and commitment. What is the difference? Most organizations emphasize motivation. So they say that I can overcome resistance by putting in place motivating factors. It would be empowerment. I could put in, I don't know, a performance bonus or a profit incentive scheme, so on and so forth. But motivation is temporary. And in some cases, especially if it's monetary, uh, these type of incentives have their utility is temporary, not only temporary, but to generate the same level of motivation, you need to put in place even more carrots. You need to increase the amount of incentive every time. This is a bit like, okay, you have a wage which is at a certain amount, then it increases. For some time, you say, okay, now I can buy more things with this wage. But then to be more satisfied, to get the same high, you need to have a higher increase in your salary in order to be satisfied. And that is one of the big problems of motivation because you need stimuli which are bigger in order to get the same response. And that is a problem because you generate just temporary actions. Commitment, on the other hand, is long term, is sustainable. It's something which you need to achieve through because you believe in a common purpose, and no matter what, you invest yourself in achieving that digital transformation. Commitment obviously is harder to achieve than motivation, but commitment primarily is achieved first by listening to pains, developing a strategy that addresses the pains of the people, and showing them the overall purpose that they are contributing to a higher value purpose that transcends not just the organization, but also society as a whole. Every one of us feels that we need to contribute. We need to contribute not just to ourselves or to our family, but to society. Because at the end of the day, we are in this world, our life is temporary. But what we do during our life impacts and transcends from one generation to the other. And if we all feel this at a very basic level, if we can feel that we can leave an impact on the world, then we can generate a level of commitment which is not possible through the normal channels of motivation. I might sound a bit idealistic, I know, but deep down, every person wants to have an element of contribution to the world. And by creating a work environment which obviously is rewarding for them, but on top of that, it's creating a higher purpose. And there is a shared vision where everyone is sharing the pain for the change, then the commitment is in place. I like one of the quotations of Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn says, there are two types of pain, the pain of change and pain of regret. Most people choose the pain of regret, means that they feel sorry because they didn't instigate a change process. However, the pain of change leads to an improvement. So it is better to sustain the pain of change than the pain of regret. And by showing this vision to and understanding to employees of the company and all the stakeholders that there needs to be a pain for change in order to avoid the pain of regret in the future, then you can create a commitment to this vision and higher purpose. But obviously, this comes with a big caveat that the gains from the change process have to be shared in a fair manner across everyone. You cannot expect people to basically commit to a vision and there is no improvement within them. So there needs to be some form of fair distribution. Otherwise, people will feel exploited and they will not contribute to your cause. The cause has to be shared, equal distribution, and equal pain. So the leader has to go down to the level of the people. So it's not about having a hierarchy, but having a circular relationship with a number of people, of peers, who are striving together to achieve a common purpose.
That makes so much sense. And you just summed it up on so many levels. It's absolutely amazing. And as a person who has been leading a data analytics and insights team in a big corporation myself, I remember that resistance to change and that fear behind the usage of new technologies, the fear behind new investments, the fear behind the change, and the data driven customer centric processes were usually quite impactful, but at the same time very difficult to implement because it required new way of thinking, new processes, new connections, and
Yes.
introduction of so many factors on many levels. And on the personal level, it is important to find that why in order to connect the person with the purpose and turn one just engaged person in a committed one. So that is really the golden nugget of transformation, that commitment has to be in place.
So true. So true. Yes. And what to recount what you're saying, clearly technology, as you rightly put it, has a lot of implications on the workplace. And there is that fear element that will I lose my job? Will I be capable of using the new technology? Or there could be some people who genuinely don't trust the technology that they will be doing better. In some cases, I've been called in digital transformation programs after a failed attempt. And that is the worst position to be in. Why? Because there is a lot of skepticism from people to and lack of trust of that particular technology. I can recount one particular instance where it was a large corporation which employed thousands of employees, and it wanted to implement Oracle HR. It wanted to automate the payroll process. And when it introduced the technology inside the organization, it was a complete mess. The payroll department actually had to double the number of employees it was employing just to address the issues that arose as a result of the transformation. And the issue wasn't the technology was fine. But when I came in, the first thing I did was to analyze why do they need so many people to process the payroll. At the end of the day, the intention was to automate. And I could find many instances. So I produced an error rate from the report they used to use an exception report to produce manually the inputs of the payroll, whereas that should have been automated. And when I performed an analysis of the errors, I could find the problems that were occurring. What were they? For example, no system to approve vacation leave. Sick leave was not recorded. Whenever there were change of shifts, they were not processed. Um, some people worked very long shifts and they were not accepted by the system. And the list goes on and on. And I could find these issues were largely process-oriented issues, which were not being addressed to the system. So we had to find a way of first addressing those issues before the automation of the payroll could come in place. But obviously, people were skeptical because it was a failed initiative. How can we revive this? So the way we managed it, we created stakeholder working groups. I let people air their views and their misgivings about the system. And based on their feedback, we created solutions bit by bit on an incremental basis to sort out the problem. The major carrot was that the great mini vision was to get the payroll department in shape. It was basically to make sure that we get full automation so that people within the department could focus on more interesting stuff like analyzing, benchmarking, recommending, So there was this collective effort to make their life more interesting within the organization. So what did we do? We created automated forms and automated workflows for approving vacation leave, sick leave. We created an algorithm for predicting sick leave and detecting abuses. We linked the system to a work order system to work out overtime. And so rather than addressing the payroll problem itself, we addressed these issues. And once all these issues were addressed, then we could automate the system. They could see the value bit by bit. And once we automated, 80% of their workload was shed because they could, that was fully automated. But we didn't sack people. We used them for our more other interesting work, which they love doing. And that's why there wasn't much resistance then, because they became convinced that this process was actually working. And by breaking it down bit by bit in simple tasks, we solved the issue.
That's a really, really inspiring use case. And it is so valuable because that's exactly how you should go along the process in order to make it easier and reduce the resistance, really, because otherwise it might be a reason of why your project is going to fail. When everybody is against, there is no way to pull it through. So
Exactly.
it is an excellent case. And speaking about the communication part, from your experience, what communication strategies are most effective in transforming resistance into that type of engagement and support for digital change initiatives?
Very interesting question. I think the starting point is to understand who your key stakeholders are within the organization, which extend beyond your employees. There is obviously a typical process, which basically looks at identifying the stakeholders, classifying them, categorizing them, and then setting out specific communication strategies for different stakeholders because they have different interests. You could argue that there is power and influence. Obviously, the more power you have within the organization, the more emphasis you need to put. The interest, in the case, the more interest they have, you need to keep them more informed. So it is a bit, in a way, like a consumer strategy because stakeholders, in that case, they are your consumers, your customers. And by looking at stakeholders as customers, you need to understand their pain points. So the first starting point is understand their pain points, create communication strategies, but not just the communication, because if they have real pain points, there's no point in developing a communication that, okay, we're going to do this, this, and that, but okay, but is it really relevant for their case? So before creating a proper communication, you need to ensure that your solution addresses their pain point and then communicate to them that based on your feedback, we will create these actions. And in that way, the stakeholders appreciate because they can truly understand that you have taken their feedback into account and you are taking them seriously when starting to implement the recommendations. And communication can take various forms. You've got the formal ones, obviously. You can have a communication strategy, you can have formal presentations, you can have stakeholder working groups and consultations. And but perhaps one of the best ways is really very interesting, which I find is even organizing simple things like social events, because social events create a trust. And when you engage and embark on these social events, I don't know, a simple dinner or a lunch or getting a weekend, a day out with the family, you can understand people and the grapevine and the informal communication is very powerful. You speak to employee stakeholders very freely. They are less defensive. You are less defensive. You're not their boss there. You are an equal. You are there with them, having fun, perhaps sharing a couple of beers with them, and truly understand what are the issues at stake and how you can actually solve them.
That is brilliant. And, I'm used to give that tip or recommendation that if you want to learn more about the organization, the processes, and the pain points, then just listen carefully when you are around the coffee machine, for example. What is going on? Try to connect on a deeper level, on a level heart to heart because it will allow you to avoid so many potential problems just by learning, by listening, and the key word by hearing, not only listening, but active listening is so important. So it is about paying attention to what is communicated, but also what was between the lines. So I so agree with you, and that is really amazing that it helped you pulling through so many successful transformations. And now I'm thinking our listeners and those who are watching us, they are probably expecting some kind of big lesson learned from you so that you can share with them your experience, which you've got the hard way, but they might avoid that pain, that sweat and tears if they just think about your experience and take it into consideration while working with those change projects in their organizations. What is that big, impactful lesson you would like to share with all of us today?
Wow, very big statement here. Yes. Well, I think communicating at all levels is fundamentally important. One of my biggest learning points was on a couple of projects I worked on in the public sector, very large scale projects. And these projects, I would say, had a very high political dimension. And the hard lesson I learned about it is that when you are dealing with very large projects, it is important to understand the political connotations, not just political at party level or government level, but also at the grassroots. Because sometimes the political forces are so strong that without you knowing, they can really derail your plans. So it is very, very, very important. I learned it really the hard way to understand and really appreciate the politics with a small p of an organization and bring on board those stakeholders which can literally make or break the successful implementation of your digital transformation project. Because no matter how great your plans are, no matter how big your budget is or how strong management team you have, unless you have those stakeholders who command the political power within the organization, and those are not necessarily the senior management, they could be different types of people. You need to pinpoint them, you need to really understand who they are and bring them on your side so that you can implement successfully together.
That is absolutely invaluable because what you learn through your problems and through your underwater stones, somebody else might just apply. And I have heard this topic about politics in the big corporations. It is a big topic, as you know, and it is making or breaking through many projects. So political part of it and communication is a critical factor, and I'm really grateful that you mentioned it today, and it was a fantastic reminder to everybody who is here today that it is also important, besides all those amazing technologies and roadmaps and strategies and everybody who is participating in it, it is also an important part of your outcomes. Thank you so much for sharing it today. And David, thank you for being with us. It was such a great pleasure to
Thank
learn
you.
from you and share, spread this knowledge with everybody. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Amy. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Digital Transformation for Humans. I am Amy, and it was enriching to share this time with you. Remember, The core of any transformation lies in our human nature, how we think, how we feel, and how we connect with others. It is about enhancing our emotional intelligence, embracing a winning mindset, and leading with empathy and insight. Subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes where we uncover the latest trends in digital business and explore the human side of technology and leadership. Until next time, keep nurturing your mind, fostering your connections, and leading with heart.